my question for you, Chaz, is how legit are the Celtics this season?
Yeah, like you said, a league best 62-17 record, 35-3 at home. The only team in the entire league that has a plus 10 point differential. I think they're at like plus 11.3. I mean, they've run away with the regular season standings, have been by far the best team in the league throughout the season. And I think they're one of the few teams that it's really championship or bust this season. I mean, we've seen in the past years they've gotten within 2 games of winning a championship, have been to the finals, have been to the conference finals multiple times. And it seems like they have kind of been in that pole position before and have come up short. This season, it seems like they really have to win it all. I think at least get to the finals, and if not, it's a failure of a season. And that's always hard to say. It's always hard to deal with those expectations. But I think when you have that type of team, you have the leader in Jason Tatum, I think he's a fringe MVP candidate. He's not in that top three or top four, but he's right there as one of the best players in the league. And then that starting five is just absolutely lethal. Obviously, with the offseason additions of Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, those guys have fit in seamlessly. Joe Mazzulla in his second season, I think, has gotten even more comfortable on the sideline. So I think this team has to be considered the favorite right there with the defending champion Denver Nuggets. I think those teams are on a tier of their own. And we'll talk later about the biggest threat to the Celtics, but especially in a weak Eastern Conference, I think the Celtics have to at least get to the finals.
Especially how we saw how when they lost to the Warriors in 2022, how that situation went with Jason Tatum and how he played in those finals. And then last year, how it ended, prematurely because all the expectations was them to get to the finals. I always say that it's different when you have expectations for teams to get to the finals and win it. Last year and even the year before that, not a lot of people like they were overwhelmingly favorites against the Warriors, but no one really saw them as like, this team got to win championship or bust. I think now this year, more so than ever,
Yep.
we see how Jason Tatum is playing, Jalen Brown is playing, how those two that dynamic duo is playing in the regular season. Is they have to win. They have to win a championship. I don't think it's good enough for them just to get to the finals. I think they have to win it, and that's going to be tough when you're playing against a team potentially Denver, who has just an unstoppable player, the best player on the planet by far. It's going to be hard for them to overcome those challenges that they might face against Denver. And we're going to talk about the matchups and all that stuff, the playoffs stuff as time goes on. I think I agree with you. I think this year more so than ever, if they don't get to the finals and win it, you're saying they need to get to the finals. I'm saying they need to win it.
Mhm.
If they don't do that this season, there's big changes that's going to happen with the Celtics, and I believe it's going to start with the coach. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, throughout the course of the playoffs. East is the cakewalk. We're going to talk about, as you said before, who are the biggest threats to them. But in hindsight, 2020, based on the record, based on how we've seen them play in the regular season, is championship or bust? Is win it all or is a failed season?
Yeah, I'm basically right there with you. I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to say complete championship or bust because I do think, let's say, in a hypothetical scenario that the Celtics get to the finals for the second time in 3 years and they fall to the Denver Nuggets in 6 or 7 games. That's hard to say that that's a failure. But anything short of that would be to me. And if they do face somebody other than the Denver Nuggets in the finals, I think they would be the favorites. So, I mean, we're pretty much on the same page, maybe just slightly different on that, but I do think we are thinking along the same lines. This is a team that, ranks second in the NBA with 120 points per game and fourth with 109 points allowed per game. So, I mean, most teams are either, great scoring and their defense is kind of weak or the other way around. This is a team that is top four in both offense and defensive efficiency. So I think they're right there and they should be able to win the championship this year.
Speaking of that, and speaking of championships, as we were discussing the Celtics, who are the biggest threat to the Celtics this season?
Yeah, that's a complicated question because I think coming into the year, we thought there was probably a couple other teams in the Eastern Conference that could at least challenge them. Throughout the regular season, though, it doesn't seem like anybody is able to stack up to them. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks have their own issues, even though their offense is great. They've been pretty bad, very inconsistent defensively. Doc Rivers, since he took over, it seemed like they were starting to get things figured out. And then since then, they've kind of gone right back into struggling. The Philadelphia 76ers were obviously clicking on all cylinders earlier in the season, but then Joel Embiid, one of the best players in the entire NBA. He goes down for a couple months. It's going to be hard to stay afloat while he's gone. So they drop all the way to the 7th seed.
Mhm.
I think if Embiid's been around all season and Philly's probably in that 2 or 3 seed, maybe we're talking about them as being that biggest threat to the Celtics. But coming out of the 7th seed, having to come through the play-in, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to get there. I would say the Bucks and the 76ers are probably the two biggest threats, but I don't really see them being legitimate threats. And then I would also
Yeah.
throw like the New York Knicks in there. I thought, in January, I think after the OG Anunoby trade, they were like 16-2, I believe, in that month. And it seemed like maybe, that's a team that could also get to that tier. But then Julius Randle out for the season. OG Anunoby has gone down twice. He's back now, but he's gotten hurt a couple of times since coming to the Knicks. So I think the Knicks, the Bucks, the 76ers, you can even throw a team like the Cavs or the Magic in there, where maybe if it breaks right, they can make a run to the conference finals. But I don't really see any of these teams legitimately challenging the Boston Celtics.
Do you believe if Joel Embiid did not get hurt, that they would be the number one threat to the Celtics?
I think I do, yeah. I think they would probably be in that 2 seed, and that we'd be talking about them as probably being that second team in the Eastern Conference that at least gets to the conference finals. And who knows, they still might. I mean, we saw last year with the Heat and the Lakers that you can go from the play-in to the conference finals, or in the Heat's case, all the way to the finals. But that's going to be a little bit more difficult. I feel like with Embiid still getting acclimated back into the lineup, he just came back within the last few weeks. That's going to be really challenging for him, but they're the 7th seed right now. So, if they get through the play-in, they'd be facing the Milwaukee Bucks. Maybe they can pull off that upset and turn that into an Eastern Conference run. Like I said, I don't know. I could see any of these teams getting to the conference finals. I don't think any of them can beat the Celtics, though.
I agree with you. I believe the Celtics are the overwhelmingly favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference. But if there's one team that gives them fits, are the Miami Heat. And I believe it's just because of the style of play that Miami plays with. If the Celtics match up with the Heat, I believe off the bat that's a 6 game series. And then the situation really becomes, what is Jason Tatum made of? Because it's going to come down to him in that situation. Because they by far have the better team with the best player on it. And it's not close. I mean, Jimmy Butler, he's an amazing player. He's not Jason Tatum. I don't believe that the Bucks, although the Bucks have firepower, but it just seems like the Bucks just haven't got it together all the way. They have Giannis, they have Dame, they have Lopez, they have Middleton. They have a great squad. It just seems like the pieces are not fit yet. And I don't know if that's just going to take another year of Giannis playing with Dame to get, the chemistry right and everything like that. And plus Giannis with the injury, I don't think that's going to affect it too much come playoff time. If you have to miss some time, I think they can afford that temporarily. But when it gets later in those rounds, without Giannis, it's going to become a bigger and bigger, taller task for them to overcome. I do love that you threw the Knicks in there because I had them on my list. The problem with the Knicks is that they just don't have enough. Um, Brunson he's not enough. Their best player just not enough. OG, it just they don't have the pieces. Randall's not there. They just don't have the personnel to match up with the Celtics. I believe they can give them 5 games, run them 6 games. That's the ceiling. I don't think they have the pieces to match up with them to beat them in a 7 game series. So when you take all that into account, I do believe the Celtics are overwhelmingly the favorite in the conference. But the one team that gives them fits that I will throw out there is the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Miami Heat because I didn't. And we saw obviously last year and in 2020 as well that if they get on
Yeah.
a run in the playoffs, they can beat a couple of teams that you don't think they could. And
Right.
they're in the play-in again right now. I believe that they're the 8th seed, a game back of the 76ers. So those teams are likely going to face off in that first play-in game. And we could see another Heat versus Celtics series, which, like you said, they've given them fits in the past. I don't know if they would again this year just because Porzingis
Yeah.
and Holiday added to that group, I think would be a little more than he could handle. I will say that I
Yeah.
think it's really important for all these teams in that 2, 3, 4, 5 range in the Eastern Conference. We're talking about the Bucks, the Knicks, the Cavaliers, and the
Yeah.
Magic. Those are the teams that are all battling for that 2 or 3 seed. I think it's really important to get to 2 or 3 because that means you won't have to face Boston until the conference finals at least.